Tucked away in a forest outside Zagreb lies the Pantovčak presidential palace, where Franjo Tudjman ruled until his death last December. Within these walls, Tudjman and his cronies plotted the dark course of recent Balkans history, but this building held another secret. President Tudjman secretly tape-recorded visitors to his office, visiting diplomats, politicians, officials. Now those tapes and transcripts have been made available, and Channel 4 News has gained exclusive access.
Oh my God, how can I sack him now that he's doing so well?
The tapes show the so-called father of the nation could have been prosecuted for war crimes.
I'm confident we would have been able to establish his responsibility for the crimes that were committed in Croatia. It was more likely than not that he would have been indicted by this tribunal.
And he secretly robbed Croatia of more than £1 billion.
The country is bankrupt, and I think it basically is. Assessments of foreign debt or debt in general, internal and external, is in excess of several billion US dollars.
We were the first journalists to be allowed into the cramped chamber beneath the presidential offices. It was down here these women typed up what they heard on the tapes. They asked us to disguise their faces. These loyal civil servants know too much about corruption and dirty dealings by the previous regime. They feel their lives may be at risk.
Please try to avoid any focus on this particular name, but of course
Thousands of tape transcripts left behind by Tudjman's henchmen are now stored in a sealed vault. Before we were allowed in, an official government record of the visit had to be made. Then, for the first time in front of journalists, sealing wax and wires were undone for us. We were told, like ancient tomb robbers, Tudjman's cronies had been there before us, spiriting away 85 kilos of the most incriminating tape transcripts, evidence which could have put President Tudjman in the war crimes dock. Croatia's new president, Mesić, is purging corruption and allowed us access to the 100 tapes and 17,000 transcripts discovered at the palace.
President
Tudjman was convinced that his was an historic and messianic role, and this is why he wanted everything he said to be on record, because he thought that would be important to history.
He made the tapes to ensure history would be kind to him. Ironically, the recordings do just the opposite. The tapes tell us a great deal about how the Tudjman regime plundered the country of billions, leaving workers unpaid, massive unemployment, and a severe banking crisis. Public money was poured into slush funds to keep the president in power. The tapes show they skimmed $100 million off the top of a near $1 billion sell-off of Croatia's telephone service. On the afternoon of the 13th of October last year, Tudjman met with Finance Minister Skegro.
Mr. President, I've put the money aside for December because I think we need it. We have to prepare for the upcoming elections. It is in an Irish bank, 100% safe. Only you and I know about this.
In the post-Tudjman era, Croatia's President Mesić is pledging to find the missing billions.
We have already established contact with certain foreign institutions who are helping us locate where the missing money could be. Money leaves a paper trail, and of course all the individuals involved will be held accountable.
Immediate Tudjman family members are under investigation, and we called on the late president's widow. I'm from Channel 4 News in London. Would it be possible to have a few words with Mrs. Tudjman, please?
I'm moment, Peter. I'm sorry.
Okay. An aide told us she was unavailable. And then to the home of his eldest son, Miroslav. But neighbours told us he'd left the country. As well as plundering the country, the tapes revealed Tudjman and his apparent enemy, Milosevic, ignored pledges to respect the sovereignty of Bosnia. Even after signing the Dayton Accord, they were still plotting to carve up the region.
Let's make a deal with the Serbs. Neither history nor emotion in the Balkans will permit multinationalism. We have to give up on the illusion of the last 8 years. Dayton isn't working. Nobody, except diplomats and petty officials, believes in a sovereign Bosnia and the Dayton Accords.
What is clear is that this is yet another piece of evidence to the revelation that I got at that time from Tudjman, that these two had set up a secret deal which simply abolished the Muslim community of Bosnia and Herzegovina, and that it carved it up between the Serbs and the Croats.
But perhaps the most disturbing revelation from the Tuđman tapes is that Croatia's first president personally covered up war crimes. At the Bosnian hamlet of Mesić, more than 100 Muslim men, women and children were terrorized and then shot or burned to death. Famously, the British UN commander in the region, Colonel Bob Stewart, exploded with anger at the time.
I don't need the permission of the bloody HBO. I am from the United Nations. And as far as I'm concerned, what has happened here is disgraceful. Bad luck, my friend.
In March at The Hague, General Thomas Blaskić was sentenced to 45 years, most of the jail term for massacres, the worst at Mesić. He'd been a colonel in the Bosnian Croat army. But now we can reveal the Tuđman tapes and a Croatian intelligence report back up Blaskić's claims that the Mesić killers were not his troops, but clandestine Croatian forces under Zagreb's command. The tape transcripts suggest Blaskić was the fall guy in a conspiracy hatched by Tuđman. One of those subpoenaed by the Hague Tribunal was Bosnian Croat General Petković, a Tuđman favourite. He knew which troops were where. On the afternoon of April the 13th last year, Tuđman met with his closest aides.
Mr. President, General Petković has been called to the War Crimes Tribunal for testimony.
Testimony for what?
For the Blaskić case. To me, this is a big trap.
Tuđman weighed up the matter. Should Petković tell the truth or not?
If he can go and testify there weren't any of our Croat units in the area, then he can go.
Petkovic's testimony at The Hague was secret, but Blaskić's record sentence shows Tuđman got what he wanted. Having heard the evidence from the Tuđman tapes, we then return to Mesić. Here, Muslim families have gone back to the tiny village and live side by side with Croats again. I met Mesić at Mesić. 16 members of his family were butchered that terrible night 7 years ago. He gave evidence to the War Crimes Tribunal, and he says General Blaskić was not behind the atrocity. Irregular forces controlled by Zagreb were responsible.
Although he was a commander, the crime was committed by paramilitaries beyond Blaskić's control.
We handed our evidence from the Tuđman tapes to former Balkans war reporter and now MP Martin Bell.
The Tuđman tapes and the Tuđman evidence are absolutely vital, and if they had been available at the time of Blaskić's incredibly lengthy trial, I have no doubt that he would have been acquitted. I thought he should have been acquitted anyway. He must now be released.
Indeed, in The Hague, Blaskić is now appealing against sentence, using the Tuđman tapes as evidence in his defence. Meanwhile, in Croatia today, President Franjo Tudjman still holds a special place in many hearts. He realised his country's dreams of nationhood, and they still love him for that. But his true epitaph has ironically come from his own voice, from beyond the grave.